Thank you. All right, we're ready to begin. Thank you for your patience, and we'll start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are present with the exception of Rob Simpson, who is unable to be with us this evening. And we will okay, thank you. We will just start with for the good of the order. If there's anything that the board would like to bring forward, Yep.
I just wanted to congratulate our spring sports teams.
Yes.
A lot of great seasons.
It was fabulous. I also want to point out that we now have a direct email that reaches the entire board and I believe Frank, Mr. McCree, in one email. If you email vcsdboe@voorheesville.org, you email the whole board at once and Frank. So if there's any need to communicate or any want to communicate to the whole board, vcsdboe@voorheesville.org gets us all. So that's new and exciting. And it's also, there's a click it from the board page on the website. We also now move to the opportunity for students to be heard. If there are any students, no, you're not, okay. But hello to any students here. And an opportunity for the public to be heard. And if anyone in the public would like to come to the podium and speak, we have that opportunity right now. Or not. And then we just move forward. Today we have, we had hoped to have Assembly Member Fahey with us today, but unfortunately that was not possible. But maybe another time.
She may show up late sometimes. Like I know they
If
have
she
a long
does,
session.
then excellent. We'll welcome her when she comes. Okay, that was a song. We also now have a budget presentation.
So prior to hitting the budget presentation, I want to go over, and you have them, and I know Jess made some copies, but I don't think there's enough. You have in front of you questions that you sent to Jim and I for answering and for clarification so we could prepare them for the board meeting tonight. So I kind of just want to go through those questions and I can read them out loud and then we'll go over it. One of the questions was a request for a greater understanding of the BOCES services provided, understanding how the BOCES budget has grown year over year, and our students also participating more in the BOCES budget. Jim, do you want to discuss that?
Yes, so we put together a summary from 2016-17 through the current year, breaking it down by category. Administration and capital is determined by the resident weighted average daily attendance of our district, and that's basically the running of the BOCES, since we are one of the components of the BOCES, and that gets spread out to all the districts that are components. CTE, which is Career and Technical Education, has grown quite a bit over the past few years. It's done on a 5-year average of students in the program, so it grows more slowly than it might, but it's still going to grow because we have more students in the program. Special education. First year shows a bit of an anomaly, but the rest of the years are roughly in line within $100,000 of each other overall total. There's one thing I lumped together was curricular and extracurricular supports. That's basically Odyssey of the Mind and things like that are extracurricular or curricular supports that are used during the school day or after the school day. Library is the next line. That's been pretty stable over the years. Professional development, has been fairly stable, some years up, some years down. Cross contracts and administrative support. So administrative support is our finance package, software package. It's cross contracts where we have services through Nassau County for School Dude, or we have OLS Jobs through PNW BOCES. So anytime we go to a different BOCES because ours doesn't have the service, that's a cross contract. That has been fairly stable over the past few years. We have added a line for 1920 through 21-22 when we had a clerk of the works, so that was separated out because it was a new item. We have a transportation supervisor through BOCES. Before that, of course, Mike Boyer was handling it, so that's the expense for that. Communications is something that we've brought on over the past few years, and technology is the biggest driver of the BOCES increase. Started out very low at about 275,000 in 16-17 and has grown to almost 900,000 as we brought in one-to-one services and installment purchases. So.
Any questions on that BOCES line or that BOCES question? Okay, so I'm going to stop for a minute. Assemblywoman Fahey is here. So I'd like to actually have her come up, Rachel. I don't know where you'd like her to be, but.
Would you like to come and sit in the round
Sure,
or
happy to.
Good. Adjust for the podium? Great.
Over here?
wherever you'd like?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Is this good?
This is perfect.
All right, hi. Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt. I'm afraid I took a little bit of a tour. I have been here before, but it's been a couple of years. So had a lovely tour of both buildings, I think. And looking for my little cheat sheet from today. Yes. Good evening and thanks. It has been a couple of years since I've been out here. That was COVID, but this is the insanity of my life. But very happy to be back, and we are very much in the thick of budget, so I really try to get around when I can to talk about the budget. This is 1 year, it's a lot of good news for K-12. And for the first year, it looks like we will finally be paying down all of foundation aid, which is, how many years have we been talking about that? Tim, I have to look at Tim with his school board hat, his state school board hat on before he joined the this school board. But it's been many years in the making, so that's the good news. And it's my 11th year. I'm very proud of the many years that have been in the making to really address some of the foundation aid needs. That doesn't mean that everything is great. We know that education costs keep rising, as with housing costs, as with environmental costs, as with utility costs. So it's always a competition, but I will say it's been billions upon billions. I just became the new higher education chair this earlier this year, just over a month ago. So I will say now I'm trying to say, for years we've only given the crumbs to higher education, and really trying to make sure that we're doing more there, because we are seeing enrollments drop right across the board. We still have not reclaimed all the students from COVID. Where estimates are as high nationally as over 1 million children are unaccounted for. There are some estimates saying about 300,000 in New York City alone. And then I've seen estimates here locally for some of our schools that maybe 10% of the students are missing. So we know it's a problem. I don't know if it's been an issue here. I hope not, but the bottom line is there's a lot of work to be done, and all of that affects higher ed. Just the cohort, the age cohort is dropping enrollments nationally anyway in higher education. If we don't reclaim the students, if we don't invest in some of the mental health needs and more, we're going to continue to struggle to fill out our colleges. Not all are struggling, but a number of them are. So we have a lot of challenges there, and I will say it's it's made what you're doing here all the more important. I'm just gonna run through a couple of other things, and then if it's appropriate, I'm happy to take questions, because I know I never address what all the interests are, if appropriate.
that'd be great.
I know you always have a jam schedule, and I know you're all volunteers, and thank you for your service. Some of you know I served on the Albany School Board now almost 20 years ago, just a little shocking. Let's see, for the BOCES instructors, a lot of effort to try to raise some of the rates on BOCES instruction because of that funding. Pre-K funding, I know there's been struggles, you still haven't done pre-K.
No, we haven't.
We did.
You did.
Yep, we have a
you did.
CBO that we're using right now.
The CBO,
Yep.
okay, that's right, so it's not on.
Yeah, we don't have space in our buildings.
No space, right, and I know Guilderland has struggled, Bethlehem moved a little bit further, Albany certainly has done it, but pre-K funding, that should be good, we still don't have the transportation. I've sponsored that bill now for about 8 years. I don't think it's the anti-transportation. In other words, what often happens is you can put your third grader on a bus, but you can't put your pre-K child. So even though you might get in a slot, you can't get on a bus, especially if they're even co-located in the same school. Some of that is the age. And Tim knows this. I've also had the bill to look at the age, the start date of kindergarten, because we still allow 3.5-year-olds to start kindergarten, whereas the vast majority of other states, you have to be 4 by the time you start pre-K, or 5 by the time you start kindergarten. In other words, most have a September 1st cutoff. I'd love to hear more from you on that, but I think that it matters with busing, because if you're still 3, you have to have more of a boost, the baby seats. So pre-K funding continues to be popular. This is a little off of yours interest possibly, but adult education, we're really looking at increasing that funding as well for the first time in many years, and allowing for some more community-based literacy programs. Right now, traditionally, they have been more traditional higher ed, where it's just adults and just funded through adult education institutions, that funding for more community-based ones. There's an interest in regional high schools. I don't know how far we're gonna get on that, and I know that's been of interest locally in some areas, whether here or not. Community schools, there'll be additional funding there. E-buses, superintendent, the last time we spoke, it was about the electric buses. And as much as I've been a proponent of trying to move toward electric, toward renewable energy on a whole host of areas, including on upgrading our buses, we recognize the costs, and some of the infrastructure is going to take a little bit more time. So there's while there still is an interest in moving forward, we know we've got to get additional funds, as well as give a little more leeway on the timing. So we know that's been an issue, and I did talk to one of your colleagues in Schoharie.
Yeah, he said he did.
Yes, we had a good conversation on some of the challenges there. So I think you're gonna see some flexibility there, and I know that's caused a concern in some areas. One of the issues that I've been raising, and not sure how much it's been approached here, but the early college high schools. So in other words, high schools where students are able to earn college credit. With BOCES, they're often introduced to a number of college courses, but not necessarily, in all of them, not necessarily earning college credit. And I think that's another way to help us solve a couple of problems. One, to give students a boost by the time they're coming out of high school. It's not enough to just do the AP programs, but to also give them some college credit, which would help with savings. But also, it might help incentivize more students, especially those who might not be as inclined toward going to traditional 4-year schools. But if they know they have a year's worth of college credit under their belt, it makes it a little less intimidating. And if we're working more with our community colleges and 4-year colleges, it helps take some of the mystery out of it. So that's something I'm also working on as higher ed chair. In addition, there's a whole host of issues related to higher education. I prefer almost to take questions on that, because there's a lot of crossover on the issues. and, I know, for instance, school psychologists, not sure if that's been an issue here, but I know there are some bills to allow for flexibility with school psychologists to serve outside of the institutions they serve. And there's been some legislation on that over the few years. All of those types of issues come before the Higher Education Committee in the Senate and in the Assembly. So those type of issues we'll be addressing outside the budget, but I know that they are of interest to some. I think there's some concerns about whether it would help shortages of psychologists, particularly the school psychologists, or whether it would help encourage those into the field. So we hear both sides of that, but that's just one issue on licensing and scope of practice. All of that comes in under higher ed. And I've inherited a committee with over 350 bills that have been pending for a number of years. So to say it's been drinking from a fire hose would be an understatement. But a number of those types of issues will probably be addressed outside of the budget. And I should say licensing and practice issues, whether it's psychologists or nurses, nurse practitioners, things that all of that is primarily done by SED, by state education, not the Department of Health. And that's part of why it comes through the Higher Education Committee. So I took on higher education. Nobody warned me I needed somewhat of a PhD in health policy, but we won't get there anytime soon. So I wanted to be brief. I know you have a big agenda, and I'd welcome, I don't want to go out of protocol, but welcome if there's, I'm sure I haven't hit on some of the concerns. At the bottom, usually I have handouts. Usually we have our PowerPoints on the budget. With taking on higher ed, we just haven't put together our PowerPoint at this point. And I wanted to get here before we pass the budget, because it's easy to have these conversations once the budget is done, or maybe not as easy, but it's important to know that you can still weigh in, like the electric buses when we spoke at the BOCES event a few weeks ago. So I'm sure I haven't hit on everything. I'm not sure if there's, again, if appropriate, I'm really happy to take questions.
That'd be great, yeah. I would are there any questions?
I have a quick one. Thank you for being here. Is there any hope for funding for school meals in this year's budget?
Oh, again, thank you for mentioning that. That has come up. One of my colleagues, Assemblywoman Jessica Gonzalez Rojas has introduced a bill on that would just do school meals right across the board instead of having children or parents and families fill out forms for free or reduced lunches. That seems to have a lot of traction, and I seem to think I'm a co-sponsor, but I'm just going to add the caveat. I'm pretty sure I'm a co-sponsor of that. I just want to add the caveat, though, that it's very expensive. So it takes a lot of money from some needy programs. And again, as somebody who sees both sides of this, and as somebody who's fighting to still get more pre-K dollars and things of that nature, when you take monies to pay for those, that are less in need, it really does pull money away, and that's got a huge price tag on it, a huge price tag. Because there are some schools, where there's very little free and reduced lunch, so it's underwriting a lot. And then there are also the concerns, in fact, some of them just come up recently, that even if we did do this, it would actually fuel, it could actually exacerbate, if you will, the staffing shortages. Because then more students, I know my kids, I did PBJs most of their lives. It got boring, but I did it. And if you have more parents taking advantage then of the school lunch, it's more of a staffing need. And given all the extraordinary shortages, that was another concern that was raised. So there's interest, and in some ways I think it may help with stigmatizing children who do need and should be getting the free or reduced lunch. And if especially in schools where there may not be as many, and such as here, so it helps with some stigma issues. So but I just want to point out, there's two sides of it. Right now, it has a lot of support. It's got a lot of traction. In New York City, they already do it right across the board. Forget when it was done, but New York City underwrites that cost, not the state, that additional cost. So, but thank you for asking that.
Sure.
That has come up a few times. And I think you may see at least some effort to do more of that. Again, if money weren't always the problem, a lot of it makes sense. It just makes it easier for the schools in terms of tracking down families for forms and trying to validate and what have you. But I hadn't really thought of that until recently. It could fuel other staffing shortages, and right now, we need those teacher aides, we need those school bus drivers, we need, there's a lot of other needs that I know you've all grappled with. So when you pull from one area, it could possibly exacerbate another, and I don't know if that would be the case here. I don't know if you've looked at that, what it might mean.
We have not explored that.
Haven't looked at it. Okay, I assume you're still struggling with some staff shortages,
Across
are
the
you
board,
though?
yeah.
Sorry?
Across the board.
Across the
yeah.
board, yes, okay, that's a simple answer, yes. So that's another downside of it, and so it remains to be seen, but again, there's a lot of interest in it. Thank you so much for asking.
I have one question, but it's more a statement of wondering. The high impact tutoring set aside that's going on, districts like ours, they had the 3% growth from foundation aid, were hit with that. We are actually talking about it tonight. Has there been any clarity on what that specifically is going to entail for districts?
I am not exactly sure, but I know there's been a lot of concern. So I'm not sure that proposal is going to stay in.
Okay.
Because a lot of concerns have been raised.
Yeah, it's concerning of dictating what we need to do with that foundation aid funds and how we use those.
For exactly that reason. So I would say there's a lot of dismay toward, again, it's helpful feedback because we're right in the thick of this and I need to hear this. Again, I think it's another one where the intent is a great one, but it just adds in another layer of, and I know a school district like yours, you're pretty aggressive about making sure you are addressing students with academic needs. So yes, that's another one where there's been pushback on it to say that just adds in another layer of reporting and adds in another layer of work when you do need some of that flexibility.
Thank you.
Foundation aid is supposed to be about flexibility. So my sense is, just even from conversations today, that there's real pushback on that. So happy to touch base at any time as we, by right, the budget is supposed to be passed by March 31st. We've been very fortunate in the last 10 years that I've been in the assembly. We have been fortunate about staying close to that. But there are huge issues, all of which are expensive and controversial, like housing, like criminal justice issues, and I want to see both of those issues addressed in the budget in some way, and it's hard to imagine we'll have an exactly on-time budget, so feel free to. We always keep most of April, the good part of April free, because we know there's a lot of issues that hold it up in the end.
Speaking of an on-time budget, is this funding for education, is that a sticking point?
No. Actually, when I speak about the budget overall, and Tim, you will remember this, in my first 8 years, I think, most of my early years, education was always the top issue. It was always the most controversial, always. Funding was a huge one, and then every issue under the sun related to it, especially when I believe we were over testing for a while there. Now we're probably not testing enough because of COVID, when you couldn't. But education has really gone off the front lines, and now I think public safety, some of the criminal justice issues, housing is a complete crisis across the country, certainly across the state. The cost of living and the cost of housing are very serious matters, and education went from being always the most difficult issue, at least funding wise and some controversies, to really falling to the back burner. I mean, I think there's very strong support for fulfilling our obligation on foundation aid and doing what we need to do. That said, I think once we're past these other crises, I think there will be more of an issue. I personally am very concerned about these lost students. And while
What do
that
you mean
might have,
that these are people that have dropped off,
yeah,
and we don't know where they are?
we don't know where they are, and I think we're going to have to be more aggressive. There's been a number of national articles about this, there's been some in the city. My children went to Albany schools, and we hear there's a lot of students that have not returned there. So it's across the board that there's just, we know the rates have gone up on homeschooling. While they were always very small, it's been a dramatic jump. They're still small numbers, but it's a dramatic jump. And some of that is still a fear of COVID. Some of that is, I think some families just got used to educating at home. So, but there is just a problem of missing students. And again, in New York City, they're all wild estimates. But one estimate is 300,000 students, which is a big number since New York City is supposed to be about 1 million students. So that's a huge number if that's any way close to being true. And again, some of them may be homeschooled, some may have dropped off, some may are just, if they're high school, they may be dropouts. Your mandatory age is 16 still. So, so while I say education is not on the front burner the last couple of years, I think it's going to quickly shift to that in the next couple of years. Because we have so much, we've lost ground. And by the way, even the students that we are accounting for, right? And I'd love to hear this from any of you. We know, again, nationally and statewide, that students have lost ground. And now I'm higher ed chair, so I'm talking to college presidents and college administrators and faculty, and they are saying they are seeing a difference. And I hear it within my own extended family. They feel like they're still, you know, that their children lost a lot of ground during COVID. So, so I think, while these are not, you know, they're not the biggest controversies we're facing, I think within another couple of years, it's going to continue to creep up. We know mental health and mental health problems and suicides, all of those are all those numbers are going in the absolute wrong direction, as is drug addiction, and not that that's necessarily school-age children, but we are seeing huge jumps in opioid death rates. You know, big. So all of those are going in the wrong direction, and again, a lot of that is tied to COVID and the isolation of COVID. A prolonged isolation, and I think we're still figuring out how to grapple with it. Yeah, thank you for the question. So it's, I really do think, while it's, the funding is a great picture, I think there are many, many challenges still to be tackled.
Any other questions for something that Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Very
for
grateful.
allowing me to interrupt, and I'll be here a few minutes, or happy to step outside if anybody in the audience had a question. You know, this is a wonderful school district. I'm very proud to represent it. Know many, many families, and I will say, if you've read about redistricting, it's been a little bit of a yo-yo. Right now in redistricting, I am being pulled out of the town of New Scotland, so all of this area, and shifted back over to Bethlehem and even back into Rensselaer. So it's, my hope is, and I've made it clear, I want to continue to represent this community that I've built wonderful relationships with. So I hope that will continue, and I hope we'll continue to have really encouraging news on education. But you're a district I never need to worry much about, so thank you for what you do. It's a terrific district, and the parents I hear from are by and large always, and the families I meet are always just so happy. So thank you, and I'll be here a few minutes if there are any questions. Happy to take them.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you for having me and allowing me to
Absolutely.
step in.
I love
Thank you.
it.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, and we were mid-budget presentation.
Well, that was question one.
These are budget questions that came up for clarity that Jim and I have been working on.
Yes.
We were asked about staffing increases, increased expenditures on equipment. So we're gonna explain that in the slide. We've added a little bit more to that. Staffing, would it be possible to provide a chart that summarizes our total staffing numbers by group, such as teacher, transportation, custodial, et cetera, that shows proposed budget counts as well as current counts and the past few years? So that is this one. Here. The asterisks on it are basically you can't denote class sizes or the sections because it changes. So when you see that for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, it's not like there's one section or 5 sections. It changes by year and by need. But if you look at our projected enrollment for this past year, and if you look at our FTEs, you will notice that we have actually increased our FTEs. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But
Yeah.
But this is our total enrollment in sections, and as you can see from 2020 to 21, we have increased our sections at the elementary school each year.
Yep.
Any questions on that? Okay. Enrollment, would it be possible to provide a chart that summarizes our total, oh, sorry, I messed that up, didn't I just? I did it, no, I flipped them, that was my bad. All right, we're gonna go to the staffing chart and then the enrollment, they kind of go hand in hand. So do this one, this is this chart.
So I put together the list of current year staffing broken down by administrators, district office staff, business office staff, all the different positions, teachers elementary, teachers secondary. And I wanted to include all of the funds that pay for salaries, because with the federal funds coming in and going out, there's a bit of a shift back and forth. So that we could have a bottom line number for the entire district of FTEs. And if you look at 23-24, this is the draft budget that we're putting before you right now. And anything with an asterisk over on the left side is an addition in this budget. So, if you look at 22-23 and scan down to FTEs in the F fund, you'll see that some are dropping off. That's the federal shift back to general fund that we're doing. You can see that the 3 positions that we added plus the 3 positions that are coming from F funds make the 6 difference in the general fund. So that we can show year over year that, all together the shifts are there and we know where they come from and where they go to. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We wanted to put together something that at least, you could look at and see, okay, bottom line, we're going up 3 positions, 3 FTEs this year. We went up a couple the year before, 5 the year before that when we had COVID. So things like that.
In 22, 23, 2022, do we have 0.08 of a social worker, or was that a typo?
Don't
Or do we
know.
really have point?
What? Okay,
Does
so
that work?
0.08, if you look down at the F fund, you have a 0.92. So that's one person put together as one whole FTE.
Thank you.
I asked the same question, I saw the chart. That's okay.
Yeah, and then with dean of students, my understanding was one of the administrators, part of their FTE was considered dean of students for a period.
It would not be an administrator, that would be a TOSA, a teacher on alternative contract, alternative assignment. So the dean of students is a certified teacher / guidance counselor, not an administrator.
Okay,
The administrator would be the assistant principal for student support and equity. the assistant principal for the 6 through 12 secondary campus.
Mr. Sapienza wasn't serving.
He's a dean.
So a dean, just
But
dean.
He's a dean athletic director. This is the dean of students for the elementary school.
Right. Okay, so it's a different title.
Correct.
Thank you.
He's labeled as an administrator.
Just a dean with a different.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for that .08. I've seen FTEs carved, but that was.
Okay, so-
Yeah, we're good.
okay. So the other two questions we received were regarding technology spending and athletic spending. The technology spending was the budget presentation referred to increases in equipment expenditures for one-to-one program. Could this be quantified and compared to our historical spend? And then number 6 was the athletic spending. The budget presentation referred to increases in athletic spending. This could be quantified and compared to our historical spend. So we've kind of given you 2 paragraphs. I can read the paragraphs quickly so everybody knows what they say. For the technology replacements, our average historical spend over the last 5 completed years is directly from the hardware state aidable expense line has been $10,000. Knowing that we have about 556 Chromebooks reaching end of life in 24-25 and 580 Chromebooks reaching end of life in 26-27, we have included that in the 23-24 draft budget, about $120,000 to replace 300 Chromebooks. The budget will remain consistent depending on pricing for the foreseeable future to ensure that we can replace all of the Chromebooks every 5 years. This will become similar to our plan to have installment purchases through NARIC every 5 years to ensure that our technology, Promethean boards, copiers, laptops, Macs, do not go end of life before being replaced. As the district remembers, in 2019, 2020, we realized that there was a large deficit in our technology. We've done a lot over the past 3 years to be able to increase our infrastructure and technology that we have to be able to put us up to comparable other districts. And this is to be able to maintain what we've been able to continue to do. Any questions on that one? Okay. For the athletic budget, the average spend in equipment has been about $12,500 over the last 5 completed years. And this is being increased to $15,000 for 23-24. Athletic fees for entries and tournaments and league memberships have averaged about $15,000. The number of contests, cost per contest, and league fees have gone up so that the budget is at $23,000 for the 23-24. Uniforms have averaged about $13,000 over 5 years. That, by the way, that's pretty low. And there is a slight increase to $15,000 for 23-24. Athletic supplies have averaged about $10,000 over 5 years, and the additional items and higher cost of items make it necessary to increase that to $15,000 for the 23-24 school year. Those are the significant changes outside of the regular increase to salary amounts. All the budget amounts are set to this level to avoid the typical mad scramble at the end of the year to purchase needed uniforms, equipment, and supplies with leftover money from other areas of the budget. So if you remember a couple years ago, we evened up our uniforms, utilizing some funds that were left over through the COVID time with that athletic budget, so to be able to put us back where we need to be for uniforms. So again, these increases are to kind of help us level out for the remainder of the years. And I read that quick, but you have it in front of you.
Are those going to be posted? Are they on the attached to the agenda?
They're not attached to the agenda. We have them for you, and I know we printed some as well.
That's good.
Yep. Available.
Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. Those are just, those were questions that the board had and shared with Frank and Jim, and they had provided answers for today.
So now on to the budget presentation. Jess, can you turn the Promethean board back on, or? Huh?
Is there a student in the house? Talia, could you? That might need to be part of the students. Or requirement. Some technical.
We were training.
Well, maybe just, we have to have a student board member that does that to do all
Yes, but the policy,
To the requirement.
if you're doing any reviews.
You're part artist to cover, that's great, but we really need you to have.
We need some checkup under. Gotta hear Sean.
This was set up prior, and then that's the vote shut down.
Yeah, I can't see her, but I hear her. There she is.
Okay, so now put on the setting. And then put on a
Hi, Talia.
probably maybe because it's for new younger ones.
If you click on the PowerPoint down below, they pull it up and then present. This is why I didn't go into technology.
Oh, have it. Okay.
Do you not want it like that?
There's a way to do it. I have no idea. First slide. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I can.
Well, you're gonna hit the present so that you can actually budget.
Is that from? I can't see the present.
From beginning to left.
I'm sorry, I can't read from that.
There, yeah, that
That
one.
one, okay.
There, okay.
Okay, geez, that was, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. So, this is the same slideshow with some changes for the 23-24 budget. And Jim and I are gonna kind of do this together. So this is the basic kind of calendar and budget dates I have to go through. April 3rd, expected adoption of the property tax report card by the Board of Education. April 17th, deadline for the Board of Education petitions. We do have 2 open seats for this year. April 18th, absentee ballots made available to requesters. May 1st, deadline for the board approval of proposed budget. May 8th, we're gonna hold our budget hearing, and then May 16th is the annual school budget vote.
So, benefits of our budget changes. We maintain our funds for needed maintenance projects at all buildings, $325,000, just like the current year. That could have gone away if it needed to, including camera systems upgrades and cabling through the BOCES and the RIC, pavement repairs that we know are needed, roof repairs that we know are needed, and other deferred maintenance items. That's gonna make up that $325,000.
And as we've said, prior to this, that there's been a lot of years of deferred maintenance. So if we talked about our facilities meetings and board committees, there's been years and years of deferred maintenance over a period of time. So this is kind of that idea to be able to bring this back up to where we need to be for future times. And these are one-offs, so they don't stay in the budget year over year. So that way, when we do have difficult budget years, these can easily be taken away.
And any items that we can make aidable through the BOCES and the RIC, we do.
And again, I'm just gonna say, expense-based saves are always important, because if we can put money into this year's budget using expense-based saves, those are the money that we get back next year. So that's a way for us to be able to control any revenue. So if we put in $100,000 this year to BOCES, we can get $50,000 for next year. So that expense-based save is a good way to be able to have some control.
It also includes $100,000 in addition to the 325 for a capital outlay project, which is allowed once per year for one building. And this one would be focused on the elementary school tentatively, depends on where our needs are really. We have a rough schedule, but when we get there, we'll know exactly what we're doing.
And that outlay project is to be able to offset the things that we didn't put into the capital project. So there were items that we knew that we wanted to address, but we're gonna use the outlay project so it didn't come out of the larger scale project.
We're continuing the funds for a new reading program at the elementary school. We have added professional development for it to make it work again. Staffing increases, we'll talk about those on the next slide, specifically what they are. Increase of equipment expenditures for the one-to-one program, the 300 Chromebooks per year that we talked about in the initial questions. Special education, we've added money there in case of any IEP required equipment or furniture. And athletics, as we discussed also during the question time.
So staffing changes. At the elementary school, we're looking at adding another special education teacher based on the needs and projections of the elementary school. To be able to support the SEL and safety initiatives at both schools, the elementary school and the secondary school campus. An elementary dean of students / guidance counselor, that would be a teacher on alternative assignment. And a secondary assistant principal of student supports and equity coordinator. So those would be staffing increases that we have year over year. Something that I brought up tonight with Assemblywoman Fahey is the high impact tutoring aid. So as you know, with that aid right now, it's basically said that we had earmarked roughly $136,000 of our general fund for very specific set-asides. One thing that we're already doing is the AIS teacher that was going to be taken out of the budget due to ESSER funds. We're going to actually use that money, the high impact tutoring aid that was part of the general fund, we're going to use that to be able to offset it. The reason that we can is you're not supposed to supplant. It's only supposed to be supplementing, but since the ESSER funds were already gone away, and if we didn't have those funds, in theory, that position would gone, so therefore we can justify it if that legislation stands. We are looking at high impact tutoring and what that would look like. We're trying to figure that out, if that is needed or not. But basically what we were trying to think of is how we could incentivize tutoring for after school programs. So offer teachers at a higher hourly rate, or anyone, actually, any tutoring rates after school to be able to meet the needs of the high impact tutoring, depending on what that legislation absolutely looks like.
So we've put in for this draft an additional $55,000 for that high impact tutoring. And that, when added to the AIS teachers' costs, would cover the $136,000 that we're required to have set aside.
So even if the funding becomes unrestricted, which is what we want, we're still gonna maintain that AIS position, right?
Yes, and then that $55,000, if we don't get the grant for the SEL funds, that money would then pay for the grant that, we applied to.
Okay, good.
So the vehicle proposition, as we do every year, we're putting out a request for 2 large 65-passenger school buses. You have the approval of the proposition in your vote later. 1 smaller van-based school bus, that's the ones that have the cab, but then you have the larger vehicle on the back. Total vehicle replacement is $422,000. That has gone up significantly over this past year. We are aided over 5 years at a transportation aid ratio of 64%.
If there's any questions, please stop us and we'll be more than happy to go forward. So this is all Jim at this point.
Tax cap, this is just how you get to your number. You start with the current year's levy, you add the growth factor, which is how much properties have been added or expanded, which is a little over 2% for us. Very high for most districts. They're usually about 0.4, 0.3. You apply the CPI factor, which is maximum of 2%. That gives you a number of $20,475,002. An allowed increase of $726,701, which would be 3.68%. Capital levy exclusion is the only known exclusion we have currently, and that's the difference between our capital expenses, which is paying for debt service and paying for the buses, and how much aid we get. That is $127,000 for this next year. That increases the total to $20,601,910, which is a 4.32% allowed increase if we were to go to the cash. Our current draft includes a tax levy of $20,242,009, which is an increase of 2.5%. And with the growth, you can see the growth was a little over 2%. The rate's not going to move very much. So you're talking less than 0.5% if that growth continues at that rate.
Any questions, thoughts, comments? Again, we're looking at a 2.5%, not the full tax cap this year, with the foundation aid increase of over $600,000. That's where we currently stand.
So the executive budget proposal with revenue, the proposed revenue under the state aid executive proposal is 8.6 million. Our tax cap maximum is the 4.32%, which is 20.6 million. We are only estimating 20.2 million as the estimated tax levy, adding in other revenues, adding in the allocated fund balance, which we've set as close as possible as 2.5%. We've discussed this before. A good year is 97.5% spending of your budget. And so we do that 2.5 to keep us even. Estimated total revenues of a little over $30 million. Future aid estimates. Tax cap does provide a very strong disincentive to reducing taxes by reducing the base from which your next tax cap is calculated. Full foundation aid, as Assemblywoman Fahey mentioned, took 16 years to phase in versus the 4 that it was supposed to. And there were gap elimination adjustments during those years that set us back. There's no guarantee of any increase in future years. 23-24 estimates at full foundation aid includes, for districts at full foundation aid already, includes only a 3% hold harmless. That can become 0 with the stroke of a pen, as we've seen before.
More than likely, after now we become fully funded, and let's say the budget in New York stays where it is, we'll probably get the 3% hold harmless. And that's back where we were prior to the foundation aid not being fully funded. If there's a recession or if there's a dip, you could easily see that go to 0% very quickly.
So we're committed, as we've always said, to levying only the required property taxes to meet the requirements of our students and our district. Bottom line, projected total expenses of 30 million, projected total revenues of 30 million. Projected revenue is a below tax cap increase of a little under 500,000, significantly increased state aid, mostly foundation aid due amounts. Allocated fund balance, projected gap is still 0.
Questions?
One question, you have 80 million for the new reading program. 80,000, yeah, 80 million. 80,000 for the new reading program. That was in this year's budget as well. Is that just a carryover?
It's not a carryover because we will be using
Okay,
both
we're gonna spend
years.
that now. I think by the end of this year, we're gonna be able to spend all those funds. And then we're gonna spend those funds again next year because reading programs aren't cheap. So it's gonna be the way that you would offset it for over 2 years.
So I guess just a comment, in years past, I think before pretty much any of us were on the board, the argument had always been, come in at the full tax cap, because if you don't raise it up with the 2% cap limitation, eventually you might restrict your budget beyond the point where you can sustain it, right? But I think we're in a unique position given the growth rate in our property tax base, where even if we were to have a recession or a bad year or foundation aid wasn't fully funded, we'd still be okay. Is that your take on it, Jim?
We could be okay if there were any limitations like that by going to the full tax cap,
Right.
yes,
If we had to.
if we had to.
And if you went to the full tax cap, you'd still have to put that money somewhere. You can't just say, I'm gonna go to the full cap and then just bank $200,000.
Right, we'd have to use it.
It'd have to go somewhere. And what ends up happening then is you're gonna put in program and then a year later, you'll cut program. Because if you increase and you increase and you increase, and it cuts out, and you don't get it any longer because you can't sustain it, all of a sudden we're cutting program. And
Or paving the parking lot.
or cutting that.
I've seen the circumstance where the state auditor comes in then, or the controller's office comes in and decides that you've been overtaxing your community.
Right.
And so I think doing the conservative route that we're taking is wise.
There was a comment made recently in a paper that stated that school districts did get more funding and should not be increasing taxes. I'm not gonna, again, that was taken out of context of the person who stated it. But that is something to be concerned of, is when we have individuals saying things like that. It's like, where does that end up? Yeah, no one in this room said anything like that. Any other questions? That's a steep level. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Frank, for putting that together.
Thank you for answering the questions we had before the meeting.
So, no, thank you for sending those questions to us, with giving us time to be able to prepare for them.
All right, Frank, you're
Oh, I'm back up again.
still up.
Wait, we missed, Talia didn't be able to get.
Talia, I'm sorry, Talia. Are you not on the agenda? Would you like to give your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I just have a few things to go over about like the past month and then also some future things. The student government just hosted this year's Spring Red Cross Blood Drive. Community members, teachers, and students all participated in making it a success. Winter sports have also come to an end. I'd like to congratulate senior Reese Koenig and freshman Mia Carmody for making Colonial Council All-Stars. And also congratulations to Isabella Carmody for her achievement of the Section 2 Girls Basketball Scholar Athlete Award. And congratulations to all of our athletes for their amazing seasons. Coming up on March 14th is the Elementary School Science Fair sponsored by the Voorheesville PTA. So I'm sure all the elementary school kids are having fun making their projects. And Friday, March 17th marks opening night for the Voorheesville Dionysians production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. They have put in an amazing amount of work to put on the show, and I think everyone should go see it St. Patrick's Day weekend here in the pack. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now it's back to me.
Right.
And I'm gonna try to do this one more time. So, I wanted to share the survey that we sent out to the community regarding the holidays. And kind of also go over a little bit about how calendars are made. But again, I have to actually try to get to where I need to go here. I picture this, I know I think I know what I'm doing. Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Did I miss it this time? I'm just gonna go this way. All right, so, and I hope we can read what I wrote, so that would be, I apologize for my poor use of the Prometheus word. All right, so the calendar, really quick. The state basically denotes how many days our calendar year is going to be. Some years it can be 184, and some years it can be 186. It really runs that gamut of where we stand. All the BOCES within the school districts, again, there's component districts and BOCES, they all make a schedule that goes along with it. We have a capital region BOCES, which serves 24 different school districts. So those 24 school districts are going to base their calendar around the BOCES calendar. When we get those calendars back from BOCES, we look at it, and it basically contains anywhere between, and again, I apologize for really bad use of this technology. Here we go. Anywhere between 184 and 188 days that you can have. Few things you have to take into consideration as you're building a calendar. First thing is state aid allows 180 calendar days. That's what state aid says. If you go under 180, you start getting dinged. You can't do that, you lose aid. So 180. Teacher's contract is 182 days. So we have to have a minimum of 182 days in our school calendar each year. 4 of those days are superintendent's conference days. So the district has historically given certain days off, such as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then there's other constraints, and the day before Thanksgiving, by the way, that's basically a non-negotiable, is what I was told when I got here, is that that day is always given. So those are days that are always given off, and basically have given either for historical preference or because of what the district's been doing based off of its community. So we asked the community to go out, and now this year was 184 days because of Juneteenth, because of Yom Kippur, because of all the other days, because of the way the schedule ended up falling. It really was a very limited calendar year this year. Next year, the 23-24 year, we actually have 186 days. So teacher contract states it's 182 days. There are 3 contingency days. That means there's, by the contract state, then there was actually 1 extra day there that we could kind of play with and kind of go through. I'll show you the suggestion that was made to me and that we kind of went through with a group as well. Because there's a lot of conversations. So the district surveyed its community asking for, again, I apologize, for specifics on how they celebrate and observe cultural observances. Now, it's going to help us better understand the calendar, but it's also going to help us understand the implications, what that means for our students and staff on the school days. For example, if someone is in Ramadan or they're fasting, we need to understand that. And some community members really did share what that means for their child who's fasting going to a lunchroom, right? And understanding maybe we need to understand that a little bit better and give different opportunities. So it really shed light on a lot of different things that maybe we weren't fully understanding. We specifically asked for details: attendance, fasting, midday prayer, late night services. We compiled this information. We specifically left out, and this is really important, federal holidays or religious holidays that fell on weekends because they're already included in the observed holidays. So people are like, well, you didn't put Christmas on. Well, it's already in there. So there are things that we didn't put on because they were already a part of the survey. And so the survey results, we got 367 respondents out of the 1,200 students that we have here, probably roughly 1,000 families. So we got about roughly a little bit over a third of our community reaching back to us. And now I'm going to kind of go through, I'm going to go quickly, but this is also up on the board docs as well. Our Jewish faith families that returned back, this is the highest percentage of people that we had with cultural observances of holidays. And what you'll see is we had 12 students of the respondents that said their child will not be in school during that time frame. I'm just giving you the graphs. Yom Kippur, as the same 16 people, 12 students would have been impacted. That's 4.4% of the people who responded to the survey regarding Jewish holidays. And now, then I put the other holidays on, so Sukkot, I'm probably saying it wrong, I do apologize. 12 families with 3.3%, but only one impact of school. A Diwali, 7 families, 1 impact of school, or 7 respondents. That was 1.9% of the respondents. Did I mess that up? I do apologize. I did Diwali twice. Diwali again. All right. The Lunar New Year, that was slightly higher, 2.2% of the respondents, and 4 students, 1.1%, would not be in school during that time frame. Ash Wednesday, 145, 39% of the respondents, 4 students, 4 families, or 4 people. They indicated that 4 students would not be attending. Ramadan, the same. It was 2.2% and 2 students impacted. Purim, 3.8% and 1 student impacted. Again, this is all on the board agendas and board docs. Holi, same, very smaller numbers. Lafayette Al Qarer, same thing, 9 and 2 families, so roughly 2.5%. And then Eid al-Fitr, April 10th, that is a larger Eid celebration. Again, that'd be 2 families, 1.9% of the student of the population responded back. Passover, 10.8 and 9. So, a couple things. The survey did not include Eid al-Adha, we missed that one. And the Feast of Sacrifice is the most important feast in the Muslim calendar, is what I was told by one of the respondents back, so I did want to make sure I put that on there. The state is giving that to Regents only. So New York State on June 17th stated that they will not be giving out Regents exams. So it's considered a rating day, or you can give that as a local exam day for Regents. So there won't be, but it is considered K through 8 and normal school day for New York State Education Department. Also, another thing that was brought up is the Eastern Orthodox calendar was not included in the survey. It was not intentional, and I really thank the respondents who brought those up, because we did ask, were there other cultural holidays or observances that we didn't mention? That was one that was impacted as well. So, some of the takeaways. One is that it's really difficult to say that when you're making a calendar, that if you only have 1.9% or 2%, how you're going to pick which percentage you're going to put a holiday on, or which day you're going to put a school break on. The district historically done the Jewish holidays, we have larger faith. I can understand that. Eventually down the road, the district might have to look at when our population starts to change, how are we doing these again? Some districts only give 1 of the Jewish holidays, some districts give 2, some districts give none. Some districts this year are giving Diwali because they have a larger population when they did the survey back. Some districts are saying no, and they're actually giving, there's a district that has never given the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, they're actually giving it this year because of the way that the calendar falls. So multiple respondents, some takeaways. Overall, it was really positive. There was only one negative comment back out of 367 respondents, which is actually pretty good. I'll take that. Multiple respondents actually thanked the district for conducting the survey. Multiple families explained how fasting or the purpose of the holiday impacted students. For example, on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, you typically get that day off, but yet one of the family members said, we also, that's a day of religious observance, yet some teachers use that to give more homework, or there are, athletic events that day to make up schedules, so those students are still impacted. So it was nice to understand that and see that perspective from families. I've never seen that before, so it was nice to have that. And that really is it of that survey. Any questions? I went quick, Tim.
So if there was a student who just wanted to observe a personal holiday, holy day, can that just be an excused absence?
Yeah.
And if you have one or two students that choose to do that, not a problem.
Sure.
And we don't have to close down the school to accommodate that.
Right.
I don't want to be insensitive to anybody or sound like I'm dissing anyone, but at the same time, if you only have one or two students, you can just make it an excused absence.
Right. Some communities, though, on the other hand, have done this, and they say like they've only typically given the Jewish holidays. They've done this, and they've seen that 30% of their population respondents celebrate Diwali. So that's a larger student
Well, I think
population.
if the percentages get to a place,
And
and I
this is
don't
a
know,
good baseline for our district where we have never done this before.
I don't know what the numbers are, but it seems to me that it's not appropriate to close down the district if it's just gonna be a handful or 2 or 3 students that are going to choose to celebrate that holiday.
Yeah, and that's not the recommendation that was made in the calendar. Right. The recommendation that was made in the calendar was to add a 4th contingency day. As we know, we've been here before. There was an emergency. We had to shut down our school for a few days. That was the Great Flood of 2019, if y'all remember. And so those days do go. And having extra days, yes, so far this year, it's been mild and we've been lucky with 2, but there's always a good chance that we could get more. So having some of those emergency days on hand is not a real bad thing to have. It's not a bad problem. So keep it that way. Any questions on the survey results? All right, let me go back to Noah. And I have a couple more things. Let me get through them. But no more presentations with very botched presentations. So the capital project update, that's still going on. This is going to be going on for a long period of time, as you know. So this is, I'm not going to give giant updates. That will be more at the facilities committee when we go through it. But I want to do update on 2 kind of interesting things. One, we actually applied for an address and number for the transportation facility. So that was really, I've never done that before. I've never built a building. So we actually had to go through a process to get a new build and an address. So I thought that was kind of a neat milestone that we were at for the district. Jim and I were happy about that. The other thing that we're actually looking at is solar. As part of our EPC and as part of the capital project, we're trying to figure out how we can build revenue in and also be more green and lower our carbon footprint as we're doing with the EPC. So we're actually looking at adding to the transportation facility solar all across the top of that roof. We're looking at a system where they don't puncture or penetrate into the roof, so you're not degrading that usage, but you're putting it on top of it, so we'll be able to do it. It's roughly $13,000 a year of revenue or offset for the transportation facility. It's smaller, it's not a lot, but since we're already building it and doing it, wonderful. If we could do the whole district, now this is pie in the sky, would love this. Cannot do this building right now. The roofs are not at a shape where I would even say you could do it because you'd have to pull them off and pull them back. So 5 years out, when we do a capital project here, absolutely got the roofs, put solar on. If we were to do that and do the elementary school, in 13 years, right, Jim?
It was actually a little less than 12.
In less than 12 years, we'd be seeing a $500,000 revenue from the solar. So offsetting that with the buses and everything else that we know, that's not a bad chunk of change, right? So we are looking at that. Right now, there's a lot of incentives through NYSERDA Jim and I are looking at some different grants as well to be able to pair that with the capital project, the elementary school. Take away the high school, but only do the elementary school, since those roofs aren't bad, and we are actually targeting roofs down there as we do the project. Having solar put there is actually a pretty good idea. So we are now exploring putting solar on the top of the elementary school to help offset the cost in the future as well. That's a new thing that we really haven't done. I didn't want to say anything until we had a better understanding of the feasibility of it, but I think it's a real nice step in the right direction.
And we're trying to figure out where to fit it within either the EPC or the capital projects.
And since the EPC, we budgeted up to 2 million, is what they could do, and currently they're at 1.6. We're still waiting to hear back from them exactly how much that they think they can receive, but with that solar added onto it, we're definitely feeling that this is something that is completely doable. So fingers crossed that this works out.
Do you think SHPO will be okay with it?
They're not gonna see it, okay, because it's on
It
top of the
won't be
roof.
visible, it's a 9-degree slope, so that it won't be obvious.
Yeah,
from
these aren't the
street
large
level.
ones that go up so you can see them. It's very limited on where they go. I did ask, if a baseball coming down at 40 miles per hour would crack it. They did say, yes, that would happen. But it doesn't necessarily impact the usage of it, but it would definitely break the glasses on top. So I did ask that question. I have 2 more things. Raptor Technology. So Raptor Technology is utilized by a lot of school districts. Who on the board has went to a school district where you sign in, you scan your license, and they print out a nice little badge for you? Have you ever seen that as school districts?
Yeah.
Okay. That is actually what we're looking at doing. It's another layer of student safety and support and practices that we could put into place. You can get these through NARIC. They're post-usable. They're actually not very expensive. They do all the training, and they go into the offices. So they're, not only would it be for sex offender registry, but it would also be for custodial use and other issues that we have. So if a parent is not supposed to be picking up a child and they do, or if there's any red flags that come up, it can already be done on that. A real nice thing about Raptor is that it basically has a silent alarm. So say RG is running the desk and someone comes in and a little alarm comes up saying that they can't be here. Instead of RG handling that situation, it will set an alarm in specific people. Those people will then come address the situation. So, and those people will be probably the administrators who are trained to handle those things. So that's kind of how that will work. So I'm, looking through that with Jim as well, and seeing what that cost will be for the remainder of this year to actually put it in through NARIC. It's not something we have, it's something that is pretty much a big safety component that could help stop issues before they occur.
Ideally, doesn't this transaction with a Raptor take place in the secured vestibule?
So that's a kiosk. So those are a little bit more expensive.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that would be a kiosk that would take place in the secure vestibule. But even then, the secure vestibule where the person comes in, they would give the attendance clerk their ID badge while they're in the secure vestibule, then get it there. But some school districts don't even have that, they have just a kiosk.
Okay.
Yeah, I have, not having the people component of it makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But other than that, so, yep. And last thing that I wanted to bring up. I know, sorry, I got one more. Last year we did a budget survey. We didn't get many respondents. We did talk about last year doing it again. We do have the hours put in for a budget exit survey. I already asked the communications person who we share with another district to flip their time. So we would actually have a communications person running the station when they came this year. So they would be in charge of doing that. I gave you the exit survey questions. These are the ones that we used last year. We did tweak it because we missed something with a zip code. So these are the tweaked budget exit surveys, but they're basically exactly the same as they were in the previous year. My recommendation would be doing this again, would give us a better baseline of, getting this information back. Is this something that the board is so interested in doing or not?
I don't think we had the opportunity last year to be successful because the desk was down the hall.
There was a lot of issues.
Nobody saw it.
Yep.
If you could have a more visible place where you come out of the ballot box and it's kind of go past it before you hit the door, I think it'd be a lot more successful.
Diane Donato would actually be here that night. She is our communication specialist, so she would actually flex her hours. So we would have her stationed. And since she knows how to do communication, she would really be focusing in on how do we get the most numbers possible. Ready?
I think it would be great if we could have some students sort of hovering and directing people.
Yeah, I volunteered at it last year, and because it was like so far like out of the way, kind of, it was hard to kind of get people to come over, so I think having like a communications director, like you said, and more students would help.
And maybe candy.
And a bake sale, I was thinking, putting a bake
Chocolate
sale
chip
next to it.
cookie,
Yes.
Anything else?
No, I think it seemed like it didn't get a good baseline last
We had
year.
like 16 people last year.
Yeah, so maybe if we're gonna,
That's one of them.
if we're gonna try it again, we should try, if we're gonna try it, we should try it again.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna move to the approval of minutes, 4.1. Would anyone like to move to approve the minutes? Thank you, Paul.
I will move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Let's take the treasurer's reports. Anyone like to move the treasurer reports? 5 point.
I will.
Anyone like to second that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're going to do all of the personnel items. And want to acknowledge a retirement from Ms. Karen. Thank you for your time here, and to Megan, appreciate all you guys have done. To the resignations, thank you, or the retirements. But first we would need to move this. Does anyone want to move the personnel items of 5.2?
I will move them.
Anyone like to second them?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
I'm
opposed?
gonna state.
And an abstention. Yeah. All right, we are going to go to 5.3 for the, and 5.4. Put those two together. Any questions, any thoughts? No, all right.
I'll move those.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. 5.5. Anyone like to move that?
I'll move that.
Anyone want to second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, aye, all opposed? Okay. And the school calendar for this coming school year. Anyone like to move that?
Can I just,
Oh.
there was one thing, I think it was February, right, Frank, for the date. Was one day off, like the end date was one day off.
I don't have the calendar.
If you look at it, you'll see the shaded out box doesn't match the date that's in the list of dates. That's the only thing I noticed.
Oh, well, that's good because usually we always have to hear it.
Yeah, that was the only.
No matter what, there's always, no matter how well we try
Yeah.
looking it over.
Do we want to accept the?
Just you see it? All
Yeah,
right, you shuffle.
It's the 23rd is missing. Green.
Okay, so we want to accept it as
Colors,
the
right?
dates are written, but not the color.
as the color, no, the colored boxes are correct.
Okay. We
Just
want to
the-
accept the color, boxes version. Okay, so that's the way we're moving it? Okay, and a second? Are you moving the
I'll
color
move
box?
it, yes, with that correction.
Okay, and then second, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, we are going to move to old business. The audit committee did not meet, but we meet next month.
Correct.
All right, looking forward to that. Curriculum committee,
Curriculum committee, you have the minutes attached to your agenda there. We met on February 7th. We were joined by Jeff Ravenzio. And actually, Frank, you were not there. You
I
were
was
Gil,
not there. I
and,
was, I
we were
had,
down to a small contingent, but we made ourselves get together and we had a good meeting. We went over the reading program update from Jeff. He gave us a very thorough review of the different types of reading programs that they had been looking at, the process of the review, the information that had been shared. And at that point in time, they had not yet determined what it is. I don't know if they have yet determined the package that they are going to recommend. Frank, is that not, we don't have a recommendation?
They do not have a recommendation at this time. They're getting closer,
Getting close.
but at this time, they don't have a finalized recommendation.
But it was very apparent to me, and I think to everybody on the committee, that they were doing a very thorough job of reviewing and taking their time and doing it right. So we were happy about that. We talked about some new course proposals that were being discussed. One was called, I don't know if these are official titles, but one was Sports and Society and Sports and Civics. And we had some questions about that, and we're convinced that this actually could be a very rich program and draw in some students who would be very interested in talking about a variety of issues through the lens of sports, both as they impact society in general and the participation of them through civic engagement and such. So it was an interesting conversation. These are 2 half-year courses that were being developed by Dave Lawrence, and we felt that they were worthy additions to the curriculum that we should consider approving. Then the last thing that we talked about were some staffing recommendations, a staffing review, I should say, that showed with us how many people are, what the predicted enrollment list is for the elementary, middle, and high school, and that the predicted student enrollment is going to be, and then what the staffing for those schools is going to be going forward. We just had that conversation actually, but we talked about it at the curriculum committee. And it was a good meeting and it went well.
And I have a new enrollment study that I'm going to be sharing next month that kind of denotes where we're going to be in 10 years, which is kind of scary. It's about 1,500 people in 10 years. So we'll be up there pretty much at a bigger level than we've ever seen before, if those numbers stay true. So Jim and I are still betting them a little bit more.
The last thing I am saying to the whole board, making some notes now just based on our discussion tonight, of some things that might end up on future curriculum committee meeting agendas. So if you have anything that you think we should be considering, please send it my way, and I'll share it with Frank and with Karen and see to what extent it belongs on the curriculum committee agenda. Thank you.
You next meet in April.
We would next meet in April. Yes, right.
Thank
You
you.
don't have the date in front of me, but it'll be April.
Can I ask a real quick question of Frank? Would the civics, sports civics qualify for the New York State seal?
I don't know that answer, but I can find out. Yeah, I'm not really sure, because I know it's an elective-based course.
Right, there is room in there for electives.
Yeah, so I can check. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'll get back to you.
Next we do facilities.
We actually have not met since last meeting, but we do meet tomorrow.
Okay, hopefully, Ralph will be able to be there.
We can handle it.
You got it. All right, well, that's fabulous. And policy.
Policy, we meet on the 15th. We have not met since our last board meeting.
All right. So we have some new business. One is the approval of the proposition for the purchase of buses. Are there any questions about that? All right, anyone like to move that?
I'll second. I'll move it.
All right, we'll do that then. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then there are some generous donations that are being offered up. Would anyone like to move them?
I will.
Anyone like to second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, the Nichols Memorial Fund and the Hannaford Light Hunger Program for their support. And we have on our agenda a second opportunity for the public to be heard, which is discussed in the agenda. If anyone would like to come to the podium to be heard, please come introduce yourself with your name and there you go.
Hi, my name is Carrie Connolly. I have a sixth grader and an 11th grader and one who is sucking all the funds out of our college savings account. I just had some questions about the budget, and to start with a compliment. Due to the new bus routes, my boys have clawed back about 25 minutes of their life, so we're very happy about that after 6:45-ish, a very long time. 7:10 is like a dream, so thank you for that. I guess RG asked this question, but I don't necessarily understand leaving money on the table with the tax cap. I'm assuming no one in this room is leaving any of their payroll check on the table, and so I don't really understand. Cuomo came in, as I understand it, and my school finance understanding is limited. Cuomo came in and he put this 2% tax cap on schools that you couldn't, and I know that number is what we call it, but it's not accurate. So he limited the amount of money that schools can get through taxes. And then we are limiting ourselves below that number, and I don't understand why we do that. Because I could think of ways to spend that money if we need some help. Like science lab in the elementary school, which is gathering cobwebs, I understand. Or the French program at the high school and middle school, which has gone by the wayside. And I'm sure there's, what's our student ratio, teacher ratio? I was around in like 2008 or 9 when it was like a really bloody budget where there were cuts across the board. Like, have we restored all those cuts? I don't think that this district has had a budget voted down ever in my 20 years living here, or even going to contingency or whatever they call it. So I would be a parent and a taxpayer who would argue for paying more taxes. Also, I was wondering about, does the budget get us closer to Title IX parity? That was an issue that came up a few superintendents ago, maybe. The law says something like you have to make progress towards Title IX equity, and it's a 50-year-old law-ish. It feels like we should be getting to equity, not making progress on that. So I was wondering, I know you're not going to answer my questions tonight, but I hope you guys would think about those things.
Thank you very much for your comment. Anyone else? Okay, we have some opportunity for the board to be heard at this point. Thanks to Assemblymember Fay for coming tonight. Thanks to all of the members of the public here tonight, and to Frank and Jim and all those behind the scenes that are keeping the district going. We have another board meeting on April 3rd. Right now it's scheduled to be in this room, and we have the other dates listed on the calendar. Now we have a motion to adjourn. Anyone like to move it?
I'll move it.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate it.